Sonic Truth returns, the Dynasty-focused fantasy football podcast. I'm Alan Seslowsky of RotoWire.com, along with Theo Gremminger and the Podfather. It's time to talk about some running back sleepers in Dynasty. And before you get all excited, guys, I already know. Everybody knows every player. There's no such thing as sleepers. So what I think would be a cool way to start off is, one, let's just talk about the evolution, Podfather, of sleepers from when we first started playing fantasy football. And Theo, let's actually define what a sleeper is for the context of this conversation, guys.
Well, a sleeper is a player with hidden upside, isn't he? Isn't that the right definition, the simplest definition of a sleeper, Theo?
Yeah, I love how Matt like qualifies it, because I think that a lot of people will get on you when you say a guy's a sleeper, because they'll be like, "Oh, I've heard of this guy a million times," but that's sort of not the point. I think what Matt's referencing is players who can break through tiers of value. You look at last year, guys like Sam Laporta, guys like Devon Achane, guys like Jaden Reed, Tank Dell, Nico Collins, and then further down, guys like Jalen Warren, guys like Jerome Ford, who we knew about them, but the Dynasty marketplace sort of qualified them as this level of player, and then we saw them sort of reach new heights. So I think for us, we're trying to identify players that we think can be way more valuable than sort of they're being treated on the market. And I think that's a kind of a better way of qualifying sleeper in today's day and age when everybody knows everybody.
It's like about 25 years ago, Matt, right? And Theo, when the sleeper terror cells were in the United States, they would be kind of chilling, and then they would wake them up, sleeper, right? And then they would have plots to death to America.
Dude, why? It's Wednesday morning. It's not even noon yet, and you're bringing up terrorism, and you're bringing up sleeper cells, actual sleeper cells, Al-Qaeda.
You remember
right?
Al-Qaeda?
You want to talk about Afghanistan now? Is that what you want to talk about?
Yes. But how many terror organizations can you name? What's our top 10? Go ahead.
Top. I was actually this morning thinking about how we could tie in radical terrorism to fantasy football, and Alan totally solved it.
Yeah. Let's see. There's ISIS. There's Al-Qaeda.
What do you think? If you had to rank ISIS versus Al-Qaeda dichotomy, what do you think is which terrorist organization do you think will have the greatest historical impact?
Al-Qaeda.
Who had the better PR team?
Al-Qaeda. This is not even close, which means the base, right? I mean, that's the definition. And I mean, look, they changed the world, right? They brought down the World Trade Center. They put into motion the United States plan of to bring democracy everywhere, and so they had the most impact. You could also say,
do you realize that we've trapped you? You're actually giving terrorist takes now. Could you listen to yourself?
Hamas.
I saved you. You were about to go. You were about to add on to that.
Yeah, I was going to tell you, Hamas doesn't even belong because they're about to be extinguished. And then, of course, there's the Hezbollah, who we'll see what they have in the upcoming months and years.
Oh my! Now, this is what I knew would happen. Now you're going to bring it to present day. Now you're starting to alienate members of the audience. Now you're getting people mad. Now people are tuning out. If you talk about terrorist organizations from the 60s, you're safe. Right?
PLO,
you're not
the PLO.
Yes, the PLO, whatever you want to talk about. Once you start going into modern day and you start talking about things that they're talking about right now on MSNBC and CNN, we're losing people. You understand that, Alan? We're losing people. But it is true. It is true. For 100, 200, 300 years into the future, Al-Qaeda will be in the history books.
The 101 of terror groups. They are the LaDainian Tomlinson of listen, I don't like them, but Osama bin Laden, man, he was,
Stop it. Stop it. One thing from the list that you gave that I want to make sure that we mention, Jerome Ford, Devon Achane, what do they have in common? The upside of speed. 85th percentile or better 40 times. 80th percentile or better speed scores on PlayerProfiler. The wide receivers, same thing. They all had high speed scores. They were all super fast. And one guy that didn't have the highest speed score, Tank Dell, is one of the smallest wide receivers in the league. So when you size adjust to create the speed score, okay, his speed score is not necessarily in the 80th percentile, but his 40 time sure as hell was. So either 80th percentile speed score or 40 time, everyone you listed. Because it's not just about finding the under the radar guy that might get touches, right? It's about finding the undervalued guy that has league-winning upside, or at least the upside to win you weeks. And that was Jerome Ford Jerome Ford. Who is this year's Jerome? I mean, I'm so sick of talking about who's the next Kyren Williams.
Puka Nacua.
Forget Kyren Williams, right? That is an absolute outlier. Kyren Williams just happened to be the last guy on a team, and the only other guy they could possibly hand the ball to was Ronnie Rivers, so they said, okay, it's Kyren Williams. A guy like Jerome Ford, he is more in the center of the Venn diagram of the traits that you're looking for in a traditional sleeper, and it's guys like Jerome Ford that we're looking for this year, later in Dynasty startups, and when you're going to propose these buy low offers in Dynasty.
Yeah, no, for sure. And a lot of those guys can be like poison pill guys where you make a legit trade offer and maybe you'll throw on a Jerome Ford, a depth piece that maybe your league mate is not really considering to be anything, but you listen to Player Profiler podcast, you listen to Allen on RotoWire, and you sort of know some of these guys a little bit better and their potential. And Matt, it's funny, like when we take a step back and we look last season, we ended up with so many year two running backs that finished inside of RB2 land. It was insane how productive that class was at the running back position. Jalen Warren was another guy that had maybe a little bit more hype than a Jerome Ford, but he was certainly way more attainable last year. His trade value has gone way, way up. So yeah, it's a really, really fun mental exercise, but there's going to be plenty of these guys this year as well.
Look at 2022, Jerome Ford. He had 0.1 fantasy points per game. Jerome Ford had 12 rushing yards and no catches. 12 rushing yards and no catches. Why? Because Chubb and Kareem Hunt dominated. And there was no room for him. And that's going to happen in some of these backfields. But it's the second-year player. The second-year player that's had a chance to get acclimated. Oftentimes a second-year player who was drafted in round 4, round 5. Where was Jerome Ford drafted? Round 5. Even Kyren Williams, second-year running back. So the skeleton key here is who are the second-year running backs that have all-purpose skill sets and or size-adjusted speed that did not perform last year for whatever reason. That would be the starting point when you're trying to sniff out a good sleeper in Dynasty.
Hey, the only other thing that should be noted was Jerome Ford got elevated by a Nick Chubb catastrophic injury, right?
Of course.
So, right. No, I'm saying. So
of course.
Right. So that's the key. Like, I think for like when we're in our seasonal leagues, like for example, or even Dynasty leagues that when there's bidding, I saw people going, let's only bid a little bit. These are like when these injuries, because one will happen in week 3, right? This is like where you push all of the fab in. And even if it doesn't work out, it doesn't matter, because when it does happen, you actually use the fantasy football cliche that I love, league winner, because it actually was true.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. Jerome Ford helped you get to the playoffs, and Kyren Williams helped you win.
It's contingent upside is going to be something that we're going to be looking for in a lot of these running backs, because when you're looking at this price point, we're sort of boxed out from starting running backs to begin with. Certain times that maybe an older guy falls, but when you're looking for these upside sleeper types, they're usually the RB2, or in some cases, rare cases, they're the RB3. So I think that, contingent upside, it's something where we're definitely chasing that, Alan, especially in good offenses.
Okay, so who is a running back that looks like Nick Chubb, and the guy behind him has exceptional athleticism, runs a 4.47, and had 1 rushing yard last year? Who am I talking about?
What year player will he be this year?
Of course, this is a second-year player.
So it's Zach Charbonnet.
No. He had one rushing yard last year.
One
rushing yard. Who am I? I had one rushing yard last year. I am parked behind a Nick Chubb level talent in the NFL. And like Nick Chubb and Jerome Ford, my quarterback is a rushing quarterback and will freeze linebackers and make me a more efficient runner. But I can also catch passes out of the backfield. Who am I?
Kenneth Gainwell.
Theo?
The one rushing yard is kind of throwing me off here, Matt. I thought you were going to make a Kendre Miller argument or something like that to start this off.
My name is Evan Hull. Evan Hull is exactly what we're talking about. Will Jonathan Taylor get injured and miss the majority of the season? Probably not. If he does, if something happens to Jonathan Taylor and he can no longer take carries for the Indianapolis Colts, I don't want anything to happen to Jonathan Taylor. I have a signed Jonathan Taylor jersey in my office right over there. Thank you to members of this audience for hooking me up. But Evan Hull is going to be the guy. Evan Hull is 209 pounds. He's bigger than Aaron Jones. And Aaron Jones is now the guy, finally, with the Vikings. He runs a 4.47, 80th percentile burst score, 82nd percentile agility score. He has one of the most impressive athletic profiles of any running back in the NFL, and he also put up a 17.3% college target share. So he's an incredible receiver out of the backfield. He is an all-purpose back. He is what we wanted Tony Pollard to be. That's actually what Evan Hull is. I'm very excited to see Evan Hull in a starting role at some point in his career. He's only 23 years old. Whether it's an injury to Jonathan Taylor, major or minor, whether it's Evan Hull going on to a second contract somewhere else, whatever it is, Evan Hull is absolutely a top 5 dynasty sleeper at running back. And I think the majority of your top 5 sleeper running backs need to be second-year guys.
Yeah, Theo, right now there's been some talk that Trey Sermon, but I know what Father said at some point, right? Because we all know that Trey Sermon's not good at football. He's been okay, but he's the number 2 on that Colt depth chart. Where are you guys? Because this is actually a true sleeper. I wasn't even thinking about Evan Hull. I know Podfather during the rookie process did like him. So does Evan Hull qualify? I mean, this one seems like an actual real sleeper that people aren't even thinking about.
Hull was definitely one that I think Matt was not alone in. There was like a hive for Evan Hull where, athletically super gifted player coming out of Northwestern. But I don't know. It seems like for me, it's a mess trying to chase that RB2 on Indianapolis. And it's sort of a paradox because you have Jonathan Taylor, a guy we're going to bet on to receive a very high volume in terms of carries. He's one of the highest drafted running backs. But right now, they're talking Trey Sermon. They're always mentioning Tyler Goodson. Evan Hull is going to have to do some real work at camp to sort of get to that level. I don't know. It seems like Trey Sermon's the one, if the season started today, would have the next crack.
Man, isn't that what a sleeper is? It's a good thing we don't have just to go on, the coach speak and the beat reporters. It's a good thing we have this thing called PlayerProfiler.com, and that allows us to separate the good from the bad. Trey Sermon is already past the age apex. Trey Sermon's never been anything in the NFL. Trey Sermon, in 3 years, hasn't even been able to get to 500 rushing yards, has 6 total receptions during that time. Trey Sermon is at best, right, at best, a between-the-tackles grinder. Could he be a Zach Moss level player? And Zach Moss gave you a couple weeks there where he was very fantasy relevant and he was making a difference like I talked about. Yes. Is it possible? Yes. Mike Davis? Yes. It's very possible. But when I think of sleeper and we think of real upside, that guy's not an upside guy. He runs a 4.66. That's not upside. That's a guy that's going to get the between the tackles carries. He's not going to catch a lot of passes. And then inside the 5, he's going to lose touchdowns to Anthony Richardson. So at no point am I excited about this is the difference. You're the dynasty manager who's focused on Evan Hull in those final rounds, and then the other guy is drafting Trey Sermon. And it's all these micro decisions. and you work backwards, right? We're at the end of the Dynasty draft, and you work your way backwards. And we can start to work our way now earlier in a startup and prioritize better, more well-known, more brand equity level players, like another second-year running back, Roschon Johnson, right? Roschon Johnson certainly is going earlier than an Evan Hull, but like Evan Hull, he's in a backfield that's a mess in quotes. But it's up to us to look at the data and say, okay, once this all shakes out, and if an opportunity does present itself, who's actually going to go up and seize it? Who has the talent to actually go up and seize it? And my chips are on Roschon Johnson in Chicago.
So Roschon's actually very interesting, and I think, Matt, you've been a Roschon guy for a long time, but I think that the market price is actually very correct for Roschon now. He's running back 60 on Underdog, so you're not having any sort of enthusiasm for him in the redraft or best ball markets, and I think the main reason is it's a kind of a mess behind DeAndre Swift there, where Khalil Herbert.
You just did the thing, dude. I put mess in quotes. And I said mess sarcastically, and then you came right back and called it a mess. You fell right into my bear trap, dude. You stepped right into it.
There's a big out here where Roschon will gain value very quickly. There's some beat reporters sort of speculating that they're going to move on from Khalil, whether in a trade or whether he's going to be cut. And you're going to have a way more clear path for Roschon. And the thing that I like about Roschon with this new offense is he's a like-for-like replacement for Swift if Swift missed time. And Roschon is a very good pass blocker and a very good receiver in an offense that we think is going to be pumping up the volume in terms of pass attempts. So you're sort of right on. Roschon costs you significantly less right now than he did at this time last summer in terms of Dynasty startup value.
Well, right, because now we know he sucks. Now we know he sucks. Before we only thought it. Now we know he sucks.
Okay,
but I'm making a joke here.
That's not true, Alan. You're speaking for most people. Most people believe, just like they believed of Jerome Ford, that he had a chance as a rookie in the NFL, and he didn't deliver. Whether he broke a wrist or whether he had a severe concussion that cost him an opportunity to be the lead back for a month, which was just devastating and bad luck for Roschon Johnson. If I'm stack ranking all of the running backs in the league, just based on all-purpose talent, give me size, give me athleticism, give me tackle-breaking ability, give me receiving skills, Roschon Johnson is in the top 25. Roschon Johnson is one of the top 25 best running backs in a vacuum in the NFL. And you can get that guy near the end of a Dynasty startup. He's a throw-in in trades. It's perfect. It is perfect. As much as I love Evan Hull does not have what Roschon has, which is the size and the trust as a pass blocker and a guy that's going to carry the ball inside the 5, in high leverage situations.
Can I?
In a guaranteed roster spot.
There's going to be a year.
There's
going to be 1 year. It's going to be a year. Okay, there's going to be a year. Write this down. Everyone write this down. Everyone that has access to a pen, a pencil, chalk, a chisel with stone, or just any kind of device or a keyboard. Write this down. Roschon Johnson will be an RB1 in fantasy at some point in his career. He has that ability.
Yeah, the reason that his ADP is so low in best ball is my thought process here is that people don't want to take zeros for like even 6 or 7 weeks in best ball, whereas his dynasty value probably would be higher, right? Like
his dynasty ADP is higher. We have we have the ADP. If you go to Roschon Johnson on PlayerProfiler.com, we have the ADP tab, the all-powerful ADP tab. I go to that tab more than any other tab on Player Profiler, and I'm looking at the ADP tab, and he's drafted at the end of best ball drafts on Underdog, but when you go to his Dynasty Sleeper ADP, it's more than 30 spots higher.
Yeah, you can't take zeros like that in a season-long best ball, even if Roschon gets like the clarified start in week 10 and then another one in week 14, like that's great in lineup setting, but it's just not a great best ball strategy. So when I say he sucks, I'm obviously exaggeration for clarification. He's a running back that could get an opportunity on an offense that we all like, and I think that is it. Like Theo made the great point, though, he is significantly cheaper than he was last year, and as Podfather likes to say, dented can bin, right? Like something that was selling, a PlayStation that was selling for $500 is now in the $89 bin here.
The beauty is all the injuries he had last year, where he had the broken wrist and hand at the Senior Bowl, he had the severe concussion. Those are all minor injuries in the long run that don't affect his ability to play football. It's not like he had a knee injury or he's coming back from some kind of, Achilles. No. Like and now he's had a full year plan. I mean, he's one of those guys when I close my eyes and I think about a player arriving in camp, given his work ethic in the offseason and how he was the team leader. He was the captain at Texas, not Bijan. Remember that. Okay? I can imagine him showing up to camp and all the coaches going, oh, shit. And I can also imagine him showing up early and then DeAndre Swift stumbling into the facility. And
come on. DeAndre Swift.
No, I'm not saying he was drunk. I'm saying he stubbed his toe. Okay.
Right. He's saying he's injured. I understood.
Right. No, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying, he's not. This isn't the 1960s here.
All coked out from the night before.
Yeah, he stubbed his toe. He stubbed his toe. But in the 60s, guys did drink and smoke before games. But anyway, he looks up in the locker room, day one of training camp, and sees Roschon Johnson, and this is DeAndre Swift.
Yes, I'm sure DeAndre Swift is going to be gulping. That's how nervous he's going to be.
Yeah, he's never had to face this. He's like, man, I wish it was Jamal Williams or Craig Reynolds. This ain't Jamal Williams. This ain't Craig Reynolds. This is a true all-purpose stud you're going up against every day, and the comparison point is why I'm not drafting any DeAndre Swift in Dynasty. I'm happy to draft some DeAndre Swift in seasonal leagues, right? DeAndre Swift is the perfect example of a player that I will happily draft if it's 1 year, but if I have to invest anything more than 1 year in DeAndre fucking Swift, no.
He's pretty cheap not. In Dynasty, Swift is pretty cheap too. It's almost
good. Go ahead.
If
I did happen to draft him or find my way into a DeAndre Swift share in Dynasty, I would flip him after 4 weeks.
Right, after one good game. Remember, he had a 200-yard game last year, Theo, right?
Flip him.
Yeah.
Flip. There's got to be another second-year running back that's exciting you guys.
Don't go too far yet. Let's take a short break here, right? Let's the spot. We have amazing sponsors that are proud to be sponsoring this podcast. So after that, we'll come back and we'll give you our next group of running back sleepers.
Thank you, Alan. Great job. Great. Thank you.
Today.
I mean, you steadying the ship. I appreciate you, man. Hey, why do we partner with the FFPC? Because they have the widest variety of fantasy football formats, and it's the easiest place to find all types of fantasy football contests in the world. What if you want to play for high stakes? Well, they have a $6 million prize pool with their Fantasy Players Championship. They also have way too early best ball leagues that start in February and Dynasty leagues. They have the closest thing to a liquid market for orphans that there is in all of Dynasty. And the FFPC has sponsored us for half a decade because we are actually delivering information that can help fantasy gamers, and they're generating so much interest and bringing in so many new users, casual users even. The FFPC creates a unique experience where you can both compete against the best and make money. Use promo code UNDERWORLD to get $25 off your first team. $25 off your first team at the FFPC with promo code UNDERWORLD. Go get it!
We're back with the Sonic Truth Dynasty Focus Fantasy Football Podcast. We're talking about running back sleepers. There seems to be a lot of off-season buzz, guys, about Jaleel McLaughlin. That's the sleeper I want to talk about. I mean, one quote from Cecil Lammey talking about how Javonte Williams could be cut. I mean, to me, I thought he was just joking. All right, Podfather, you're eye-rolling. Theo, I know you have
I'm
some
a huge
thoughts here,
Jaleel
but
guy. I have all the Jaleel McLaughlin.
Well,
right now.
the reason I think this is a good debate here is because Theo is bullish on Jaleel. Matt, you're skeptical. I think I'm a little more on the skeptical side. So let Matt make his case why this is, crap, and then Theo will come back with you in a second here, and you can make the bull case.
Draft capitals, the most predictive metric in all of Dynasty, unless it's Jaleel McLaughlin. We love high-octane offenses like the Bears and the Eagles, unless it's Jaleel McLaughlin, right? We love guys that have big all-purpose skill sets like Roschon Johnson. No, we prefer Jaleel McLaughlin, right? It's just wild how a particular beat reporter comment, coach remark scrambles brains, and then it's just like Men in Black. Just look at the light, ding, and you forgot everything you learned.
Theo, 180-pound running back. How is this going to happen?
One of the easiest double taps right now is double tapping Jaleel McLaughlin with one of the two rookie Denver Broncos running backs.
Jesus,
you can do it on
Christ.
Dynasty teams. You can do it on best ball teams. You can.
When
do
is
it
this
anywhere.
offense going to be good? Do you have a timeline for that, Theo?
But it's the opportunity cost too, Matt. I mean, Jaleel McLaughlin, where I'm able to get him, his skill set matches up perfectly with Bo Nix, who's a screen merchant. I think he's going to be their best screen running back out of the backfield. He had over 30 receptions as a rookie, which is a solid metric when we're looking for running backs to take the next step. We talk about, some of the guys who took big steps like Jalen Warren in year 2. Jaleel McLaughlin compares favorably to the situation with Jalen Warren. You also have a lack of pass catchers on Denver that have established themselves. Jaleel is cheap, and Javonte Williams, guys, the guy averaged 3.6 yards per carry last year. And I know there's this whole, he's coming back from injury. But this coaching staff has no loyalty to Javonte Williams. This coaching staff, Jaleel McLaughlin is a Sean Payton favorite. And this is a opportunity for him to give us low-end RB2 numbers for a large swath of the season. And it's going to cost you like RB5 or cheaper prices in a lot of these startups. So this is absolutely the kind of player we want. Matt, you referenced speed. Jaleel McLaughlin, 4.4 speed, but it's the pass catching ability too, where a lot of these guys punch above their weight class when they're running backs who can catch the football. And Jaleel McLaughlin can easily have 60 receptions this year. Billy Muzio's a big fan of him. I'm a big fan of him. There's some very sharp money on Jaleel McLaughlin right now on FFPC drafts in all formats too. There's some of the best drafters around are drafting Jaleel McLaughlin in the double-digit rounds. And when I'm in a Dynasty startup, I love getting Jaleel McLaughlin late. It's a potential bet that's not going to cost me really anything, and the potential rewards are there. And Matt, Denver, it's not like this team is going to be without guys who can at least score some fantasy points. I don't buy into the notion that this is going to be the worst offense. I think that there's just a lot of question marks.
Does Bo Nix dump off to the running back? Did he do that in college? I don't watch a lot of college football. I mean,
Bucky Irving led the nation in receptions by a running back. 58 receptions last year at Oregon, and this is a perfect matchup for a guy like Bo Nix with Jaleel McLaughlin. And if you think I'm wrong, you can get Audric Estime and you can get Blake Watson. Blake Watson, go for it. Javonte is not the dude.
To draft freaking Broncos. This is what I don't understand.
It's that we're not talking about reaching for them. These are
you don't have to reach
round picks.
In every draft. There's 12 picks on average before your next pick, and in those picks, there's going to be players on bad teams and players on good teams. I like to draft players on good teams. The argument for McLaughlin is that they're going to be behind against the Chiefs and it's a tough division. And yes, Bo Nix is a check down quarterback, and he's inexpensive in Dynasty, and he's going to soak up a bunch of receptions, and he's a guy that you can flex, absolutely. But I don't see the upside in terms of I see a guy that could have a couple big weeks, could break off a 90-yard run, and could capture the imagination, absolutely. And we've seen Theo Riddick be like a top 15 running back in fantasy once upon a time. Chris Thompson was a top 15 running back once upon a time.
Danny Woodhead.
Pure pass catching running backs. Okay, he's not Danny Woodhead. Danny Woodhead's profile was exceptional. He was an absolute monster college producer and had an incredible athletic profile. And yes, McLaughlin had 1,600 rushing yards and 15 touchdowns in college, but he never had more than 20 catches. So I don't think he's the same kind of receiver that Danny Woodhead is. I don't think he's at a Woodhead level talent. But yes, Theo Riddick, Chris Thompson, absolutely. Did those guys give you one season at some point? Yes. But
James White. Is James White a decent comparison? Because of how
I think a lot of these guys, I think the argument for the long-term value for some of these sleepers, I think that's sort of like we're looking at a short window for a lot of these guys. It's really a 2-year window for any of them. So yeah, I don't think Jaleel McLaughlin's somebody who's long-term, but there's been guys like Tariq Cohen, these smaller running backs who an offense that, where I can get utility out of a guy. Chris Thompson, Jason Allwine in the chat just made a nice reference to Chris Thompson.
I just
had that
said
one
Chris
magic
Thompson.
season.
Are you listening to the show?
I'm listening to the show.
Jason, are you listening? Theo, are you listening? I acknowledged that, yes, 10 years ago, yes, we've seen these. I thought that the show was about sleepers. And I thought the definition of sleeper was, hey, upside. Guys that for swaths of the season can be players you can ride, players you could put at the RB1, RB2 spot, and they're racking up 20 fantasy points. Roschon Johnson can be that guy. Even Evan Hall can be that guy. I don't see it with Jaleel McLaughlin. He's more than 20 pounds lighter than Evan Hall. I don't get it. I don't get the fascination with these guys that are going to have this role, and it's going to be this nice 50-plus catch role if things break their way, and there's going to be a few weeks, but you're never going to know when to start them. So if anything, if you're making a play on a Jaleel McLaughlin, I think the comp is better for a DeAndre Swift, where I like him in a seasonal league context, especially on Underdog. The place I want to draft Jaleel McLaughlin is seasonal best ball, because I think he has a chance to have some spike weeks this year out of the backfield with his speed, delivering a 90-yard touchdown. But this is not a sustainable dynasty asset. I don't want to get him confused. And the cool thing is McLaughlin, he is surging on Underdog. Just in the last 7 days, he's up half a round. In the last 30 days, he's up 2 rounds on Underdog. And this makes sense to me. This is the argument. But the last time I checked, this was a dynasty show. And if you just want to, you want to draft a guy to flip him, okay. But that's not how I play dynasty. If I'm going to play dynasty, I'm going to be looking for sustainable long-term assets that I believe can one day be an RB1 in fantasy for a full season like Roschon Johnson, not Jaleel McLaughlin.
All right, guys. Then how about if you want to use that parameter, which is, there's 2 different kinds
I
of
thought we had a
definition. Running back utility, this is a whole nother philosophical argument. A lot of these, when we're talking about winning dynasty leagues and trying to get through weeks, running back utility also matters. And a lot of times, depending on the way we're structuring our teams, not every running back is going to give us, massive RB1 overall ceilings. In today's day and age in the NFL, those guys are few and far between. So
you're going to be frustrated. Most dynasty leagues are not best ball. You're going to be very frustrated trying to figure out when to start Jaleel McLaughlin. Good luck.
Right.
I will manage.
if you're in these start 12, start 11, you need everybody that's a warm body. But guys, I want to move off McLaughlin here because I think you said it all. But Blake Corum.
Are you drafting McLaughlin, Allen?
He's so cheap, and now that he's moving up, no. But when he was cheaper, it was people are like shoving each other out of the way and victory lapping and looking from a high five from the room when they get McLaughlin. Not anymore, right? I like the players that go around him, but I understand.
187-pound Denver running back. People are high fiving themselves. They should be embarrassed.
Philip Lindsay, right? That's who this is, more or less.
I think Philip Lindsay had more potential as an every down player. Actually, did not go to Youngstown State. Actually played.
He was, to McLaughlin's credit at Youngstown State, was a mega producer there. That's not exactly like the when we're talking about FCS schools. That's a team
hope
that's been
really. I hope that everyone remembers this. I really do. I really hope. And that the next undrafted guy that I get excited about, people throw draft capital back in my face, I hope now I have another name to add to my list of Danny Woodheads that I can go back and say, well, what about player X? What about player Y? What about player Z? Austin Eckler was undrafted from Western State. Okay, that's basically the Colorado equivalent of Youngstown State. I'm with you, man. I'm with you. But the time to draft Austin Eckler wasn't in the midst of a hype bubble.
Right. Yep.
This is fair. And to Allen's point, I agree with you, Allen, where Jaleel was super cheap 6 weeks ago. He's going to get to a point where you're going to be like, having to go Jaleel McLaughlin versus guys with a way more clear path towards longer viability. So I'm with you. There's other guys, though, here. I'll throw out another. If you want to stick on second-year running backs?
Well, real quick, Theo, before we leave okay, just real quick, just do a quick running back dichotomy. Breece Hall or Jaleel McLaughlin, Theo?
Definitely Jaleel.
It's got to be Breece right there, Matt, after a long debate in my head. Yeah.
Right? It's got to be it's close.
You know what? Actually, stick with this theme for a second here. Who do you think, using Matt's definition, has the chance to ascend to a top 12 ranked running back? Is it Jaleel McLaughlin or Braelon Allen? Right? I mean, if Breece Hall's out, where would Braelon Allen be ranked in the consensus weekly rankings? Probably top 15, right?
But it's a different bet because I did a hand. If anybody wants to see my full handcuff rankings, you can read them at PlayerProfiler.com. And Braelon Allen was in there, but he's more of a direct handcuff. I think that even like the big Braelon Allen backers here, there could be a chance that they're going to use him like an AJ Dillon light, where he's going to be a change of pace back this year. But the real value for Allen would be the contingent upside if Breece Hall were to miss time. I think that he's in the driver's seat ahead of Isaiah Davis, ahead of Israel Abanikanda. It seems like that's sort of the beat on the Jets. They think they drafted a good one in Braelon Allen. But, Breece Hall, this is a guy that is an every down back. Like, if you look it up, the guy's an every down back. There's no opportunity for Braelon Allen to be used as a receiver. So you're really banking on rushing touchdowns and a high volume of carries. That's sort of his path if Breece Hall were to miss time. But I do think Braelon Allen is moving up in terms of dynasty startups. There was like a big drop after the landing spot in the NFL draft where it looked like it was a big question mark as to who's going to be the number 2 back. Now the market sort of corrected itself, and Braelon Allen, I think, is heading on his way to like a handcuff you want on your roster, sort of the Tyler Algier to Bijan Robinson tier. I think that's sort of how he's headed.
I just wish he was better than Isaiah Davis, but he's not.
Yeah, good one. I like that. Hey, listen, who knows? We'll see in camp, guys. But a couple of rookies, I think, qualifies as quote sleepers, and not that
Can we not go to rookies? I know there are going to be a handful of rookie sleepers, but we haven't even talked about the absolute stone best. Is that a term yet? Stone worst. Because a stone falls to the bottom, right? That's why it's stone worst. So what would it be? Feather best? Rocket best? Would it be rocket best? Would it be shooting star best? Stone best. I'm just going to say stone best because of the irony there. The stone best sleeper is Kendre Miller.
Love it.
I mean, Kendre Miller is everything we've talked about, except that the touch competition that he has in front of him is older, right? And, even you look at Jamal Williams, he's a lesser back compared to Khalil Herbert. So, and Kendre Miller is even more explosive than Roschon Johnson. So he's not the all-purpose stud that Roschon is. But Kendre Miller has a lot going for him, man.
Yeah, Kendre Miller, it's funny. If Kendre Miller would have gone back to TCU and been in this draft class, there would be a lot more enthusiasm for him than there is right now. Now, I think the market's picking up a little bit, Matt. Like if the whole argument for, Alvin Kamara is going to be 29 years old in July, and then this whole Taysom Hill being used as a Swiss Army knife, but he's 33 years old. So the competition for touches in the backfield is two older players. And Kamara was really good last year, but at the end of the day, this offense is screaming for a guy who can handle weekly touches. Kendre Miller is certainly it. We were fans of his at Player Profiler for a long time. I know Matt was very enthusiastic about him as a prospect. Cody Carpentier was a big Kendre Miller fan. I remember an Alan Seslowsky moderated debate between me on Devon A-Chain and Cody on Kendre. It got a little heated, Alan, on one of your podcasts last year. But Kendre is a guy that it's sort of a post-hype sleeper, if there ever was one, Matt, because this is a younger back with size, with two-way ability. This is a guy that could really punch above his ADP this year. If Kamara misses time, it's hard to not view Kendre as like a weekly top 15 option because I think he would handle a lot of receptions out of that backfield. They also don't really have anybody who's an underneath receiver there. Like if you look at that roster, they have guys like Chris Olave, guys like Jawan Johnson, Rashid Shaheed, A.T. Perry, but they don't have, besides Kamara, a player who can make, those low ADOT receptions. So I think he would have to be used as a receiver out of the backfield on any week that Kamara would miss as well, with Carr behind center. So Kendre checks off all those boxes. And Matt, I think like when you're talking about looking for a guy with kind of long-term viability, Kendre Miller is 21 years old. This is a younger player. So he checks off all the boxes for what we're looking at in this sort of mental exercise. A year two player that could crush his ADP, has multiple paths to viability, and was a talented prospect coming out that the Saints drafted in round 3.
If the Saints decide to classify internally Taysom Hill as a running back, they may not want to keep more than 3 running backs on the roster. They're going to keep Alvin Kamara. They're going to keep Kendre Miller. Okay, and if Taysom Hill is the 3rd running back, that means Jamal Williams is cut. And we have a contracts tab on Player Profiler. And the contracts tab on Jamal Williams says that there's an out in 2024 for $2.34 million of dead cap.
They're going to need Hill to be tight end. They're down another tight end with Juwan Johnson going to be out for a good portion of this year. So don't look for that tight end designation to go anywhere anytime soon. But your point is a good one, that they can call him anything they want if they actually see him as somebody that's going to.
They have Foster Moreau though.
Thank God.
Right? They have, no, I'm just saying you never know what can happen with these tight ends that they pick up. You end up, hey, we believe in Tommy Hudson. Tommy Hudson's our blocking tight end. Foster Moreau's our receiving tight end. Taysom Hill is the Swiss Army player. They have to put him on the depth chart somewhere when they're accounting for all these players, and they might like what they're seeing with some of the depth tight ends that they like. And just say, it's not crazy to imagine a world where the Saints don't keep Jamal Williams, that they're like, hey, we're in this, rebuild on the fly mode, right? And we need to get younger. Alvin Kamara is already well past the age apex. Jamal Williams comes into camp. He's cool. He's a fun guy, right? He's funny, but he's at the end. He's 29 years old, and he was running a 4.6 coming out of BYU. How much longer is he going to be able to offer a team any kind of juice whatsoever where they're looking at him in practice going, yeah, this guy's offering this is helping our team. I love Jamal Williams as a person. I think he's a great guy. I think he has a future, a great future as a commentator. But I think that's going to be the direction that he moves in pretty quickly.
Are we allowed to talk about non-second year or rookie running backs in this mental exercise?
This is
Apparently
even
not.
better. No, this is even better. What I don't like talking about when you're talking about sleepers is sleeper rookies, because we've only talked about rookies for the last 6 months on a loop.
You see, this is where I think that you're off yours, because we've been talking about them, but Player Profiler's audience is so large and diverse that there's people just coming back from their off-season rest that haven't heard you talking about these guys.
Let's go around the table then. Alan.
But if you're not passionate
go
about
ahead.
it,
Let's get it out of the way. Alan, who's your favorite sleeper rookie right now?
It's not that it's a sleeper rookie. It's that
Go ahead.
I want.
No, go ahead. Name him. Who is it?
Oh my God! If you're not, if it's called, I could smell.
You don't even have one in mind. You
Of
put
course
your
I
foot
do.
down
Of course
here,
I do.
You were
I
trying to
haven't-
get a toehold, and you tried to latch on to this segment, this rookie sleeper segment that you didn't want to let go. Okay, give us a guy.
Guys, I want to talk about.
You're not going to get. You don't have a guy in mind.
I've been saying
Well, can we talk about my non-rookie running back? This is a good one.
I want to get the rookies out of the way so we can talk about non-rookie sleepers, especially guys that are not even second-year guys, the guys that have been around a while. Then you're starting to get into truther territory. That's where I really think the conversation can get interesting, Theo. But I want to move past any remaining rookie sleepers, get it all out of our system. Alan, go ahead. Alan, you must have a guy. I filibustered enough for you, Alan. You must give us a name.
We're moving on. I don't have any.
What?
rookie
You don't
sleepers.
have a name?
Zero of them.
Theo, do you have a name?
Well, I mean, none of these guys are sleepers to our audience, but I think that it's interesting right now with the sort of indecision.
You're living in a bubble, Theo.
The indecision in New York with who is backing up Devin Singletary. There are people on Tyrone Tracy. There are people on Eric Gray. Both of these guys have unknown upside. Both of these guys were drafted in the last 2 NFL drafts. I've taken a ton of shots on Tyrone Tracy. I have a lot of exposure to him in Dynasty. I'm trying to mix in a little bit of Eric Gray in case I'm wrong, but I think there's a lot of value there.
It's very smart.
Because Devin Singletary is a guy where I think he's going to be very useful to start the season. I think he's going to sort of bat above his ADP in several formats, but it's the ability of Devin Singletary is no bell cow. He is no 250 carry type. He's not a guy that can be treated that way. So at the very least, you're going to have an RB2 that's going to be mixing in weekly. And then in any single week that Devin Singletary is going to miss time, I think that there's a ton of contingent upside there. Tyrone Tracy would be the one that I think we'd be most excited about athletically. Gifted athlete, has the size, sort of an Antonio Gibson type outlook athletically. But Eric Gray can catch the ball. So like we talk about multiple outs. Matt referenced the speed of these contingent upside players. I talked a little bit about the pass catching ability. Both of those guys have that. And Tyrone Tracy has the pass catching ability as well, former wide receiver. So both of those guys, they're cheap. And then you talk about a lot of
if you were going to pick a bottom 10 offense, okay? If you're going to take a bottom 10 offense and say, "Hey, here's an offense where I'm going to try to get the backfield options that could hit," right? Giants are much better team to go grab 2 guys from. In this case, Tyrone Tracy and Eric Gray. Eric Gray, second-year player. Right, Eric Gray is very productive at Oklahoma, and like a lot of running backs, takes a year to get acclimated to the league. I like drafting both of these guys. They're so inexpensive, right? They're going later than Jaleel McLaughlin. It makes all the sense in the world. You could absolutely draft both of them. In Dynasty, we have so many bench spots. Why not? Right, especially if this offense exceeds expectations. That's much better than, say, going Estime and McLaughlin. Puke.
Hey,
okay,
if you
much rather go with these
Jake Watson.
The last season, guys, Devin Singletary was RB what on the season? The last 2 months of the season, from week 10 on.
Oh, from week 10 on, if we're looking at splits, he was giving you running back 16,
9 overall,
somewhere in that
9
range.
overall,
9 overall.
He's
Yeah, he was
inside
very
the top
good
10.
there.
That's what I'm
Yeah,
saying.
I have
so
some Devin I have Devin Singletary on some dynasty rosters, and I've been able to add him a little bit this offseason. I think he's going to have utility, but it's sort of betting against his profile. Like a guy in this stage of his NFL career, this is very much we're losing Saquon Barkley. We want somebody with familiarity with Brian Dable. Brian Dable loves Devin Singletary. He calls him Motor. Like Motor is his nickname. Dable refers to him as Motor all the time. And I think that it was sort of a stopgap, if anything. But at the end of the day, that sort of archetype can't really change. You can't make Devin Singletary into something he's not. So I think at the end of the day, there's going to be opportunities for a second back there under Dable. And it's just for me, it's a bet against Singletary being able to hold up if they're treating him differently. Like, it's tough to go from, I believe his highest number of carries in any season of his career was like last year in around 215 range. To ask a player like that to suddenly become a 260 carry guy is a lot. So I think there's contingent play here, and also just betting on this sort of archetype that's cheap in all these dynasty formats. So I think both those guys are interesting.
Pick and flip. That's what you do with Devin Singletary in Dynasty. You pick and flip. The season can absolutely not. Okay. If the season ends, it's week 17, the games are over. Okay, you have all these Dynasty teams. If you have any Swift or any Singletary, when the season ends, you're a sucker. You should have flipped them. Now, I want to stay with the NFC East and do exactly what Theo was doing. So you do have teams, right? In Dynasty, you can absolutely draft multiple running backs on the same team. Handcuffing is very much allowed in Dynasty in a way that it is not in seasonal leagues. And there's a whole chapter about it in this book, The Dynasty Dominator. Okay, get it on Amazon. So you have teams, right, Theo, where you have both Tracy and Gray?
A couple.
Yeah, of course. I have teams where I have two running backs on the same team, Will Shipley and Kenneth Gainwell. Will Shipley and Kenneth Gainwell. For Shipley, very similar reason to Evan Hall. Same size as Evan Hall, similar athletic profile to Evan Hall, similar production profile to Evan Hall. It's just that he wasn't going to be able to produce as much as Evan Hall did. Evan Hall was the offense at Northwestern. Will Shipley was at Clemson. Will Shipley was drafted a couple rounds earlier than Evan Hall. Will Shipley was a 4th-round pick.
Yeah.
The NFL likes Will Shipley. Scouts like Will Shipley. Everyone likes Will Shipley. So I like Will Shipley. And that's the type of player that is a long-term buy. Every year I'm going to be coming back and saying, in this offense, it's Will Shipley. Because also, the tush push is not forever. Okay, eventually, the NFL, the one thing we know is that gimmicks last for a season. Maybe 2. Right? Remember the Miami Dolphins?
the RPO,
the direct snap to Ronnie Brown.
Not the RPO. What was that called again? That was called something. What the hell was that called?
I can't believe it's Wildcat.
Wildcat. There you go.
That's right.
There
and
you
the chat too. The chat beat Theo, but Theo was very quick with that with the Wildcat. Remember the Wildcat that worked for less than 3 games?
Yeah, that was truly a gimmick, though.
It was extinguished. You don't think the tush push is a gimmick?
I don't. I think it's actually it's very strategic.
I know, but it's not going to be the same. They're also not going to keep risking Jalen Hurts in that way either.
Well, then you got Barkley now too. But I understand your point.
Right,
overall.
I understand they have Barkley, and so what I'm saying is, even Kenneth Gainwell is starting the year as the number 2. And Kenneth Gainwell is quite good. He's just actually smaller than Will Shipley. Both of these guys are all-purpose backs. Both of these guys could be guys that unlike a Jaleel McLaughlin, if Saquon Barkley misses time, and he's missed a lot of time, let's say he pulls a quad. What's the odds that Saquon Barkley pulls a quad this year? Pretty high? Think he's going to pull 35. A quad? I do. I'm not saying he's going to get injured. I'm saying specifically he's going to pull a quad.
Specifically a quad?
His quads are bigger than my head.
Is there numbers up on that?
Matt doesn't want to say injured. He wants to give the exact injury. But
right. Well, that's where the victory lap is even better. Right. I don't victory lap injuries, but yeah, if I call an exact body part ailment, I might have to victory lap that. But Gainwell, see, this is a great offense. Right. This is a great offense. And the guy behind Gainwell is a rookie. As much as I like Shipley, it's a long-term play. So, I mean, Gainwell would be the lead back. Gainwell was the lead back last year to start the season before he got nicked up. So the team trusts him. The team loves him. They had T-shirts made of him. This is one of those conviction plays where I am a Kenneth Gainwell truther. And hell, if I'm going to drop him in Dynasty just because he didn't produce last year in the presence of DeAndre Swift, who's a mega talent. And now Saquon Barkley's a mega talent. But there's going to be years and seasons coming up, his contract expiring, right? Just like Devin Singletary, where Kenneth Gainwell is going to find himself on a team where he's the best guy. It's going to happen. And everyone's going to want him. Last year, no one wanted Devin Singletary. Now, he's very viable. And this very much could happen with Gainwell this year. So now that I've talked about Will Shipley, he's my rookie sleeper. Okay, yeah. Now we can move on, right?
I'll throw in just one more quickly because I think he's going in the similar range as Will Shipley. But Will Shipley's 21 years old, like stud athlete, big time producer at Clemson early in his career. Ray Davis is the one that's like 24. Ray Davis is, everybody sort of knows what he is, but this is a guy who had 1,000 yards rushing in back-to-back seasons in the SEC, had 20 touchdowns last year in the SEC, and like Shipley, he plays on one of the best offenses in the league in Buffalo.
Now we're talking.
He's a like for like replacement with James Cook. If James Cook goes down, Ray Davis is a very, very good receiver. This was a very productive receiver in the SEC as well. So Ray Davis...
Well, he's a better receiver because James Cook's not even a good receiver. James Cook's an explosive slasher.
Yeah.
James Cook is like a lighter Tevin Coleman.
Ray Davis, we might even have a video for the world-famous draft kit because Tyler Knabel, our producer, and a really great fantasy analyst himself, Tyler Knabel is team Ray Davis all the way for months and months and months.
Oh, so yeah.
We got to mention Ray Davis. And then may I mention a non-rookie, or we got another rookie to talk about?
No. Well, now that you've mentioned another rookie, I have to mention. Now, see what you've done to me?
We'll go rookie
now I have to mention one. This is a doom loop. This is a rookie sleeper doom loop. Shame on you. Damn you.
Damn
Theo
you, Allen.
Gremminger. We have to, if you're going to mention Ray Davis, and we have to talk about Kamani Vidal. We have to talk about Vidal Sassoon because that's the guy that has the straightest, easiest path to touches with a quality quarterback.
I mean, 100%. But Vidal Sassoon is being treated like this guy is steaming, and now Gus Edwards takes a knock. He's going to miss a little bit of time there. He'll be back for training camp. But Vidal.
Okay, so now we're saying he's too hyped up to even be a sleeper. Touche. I admit I did not go to the Kamani Vidal ADP tab on Player Profiler before I mentioned his name. I should have. Thank you for calling me out. I deserve to be humbled by that. I will cross out. I love Vidal. I think I love small school guys before they get all the unnecessary hype. But if he's getting all the hype, then I got to pivot off to New Hampshire's own Dylan Lobby. If you're going to be on an offense that's either good, just elite offense like the Bills, the Eagles, or super underrated like Gardner Minshew and the Raiders, and you catch passes and you have a monster production profile in college, I will like you. I will sign off every time on that guy, and that's Dylan Lobby.
Very good.
I think that closes it out for the rookies.
Yep. Guys, we're talking about second-year players or, guys that are veterans. There's groups of guys that are a little bit more exciting, and then there's the boring ones. I always think, like, the boring ones are more exciting to identify for the same reason that we talked about Zach Moss last year or Devin Singletary. Does someone like Chuba Hubbard, right, given the situation, who wasn't bad last year, is that like a true sleeper? In Theo, in this Draft Sharks mock draft, I just got him in like round 18. He could be the starting running back for the month of September on an offense that's probably going to be improved.
Yeah, Chuba had like a golden opportunity last year, and he ran for 900 yards. He had nearly 40 receptions. So I think that's fine. I just think at the end of the day, it's a short-term bet because Jonathan Brooks is like the real deal. But I agree, Alan, based on where he's going.
These are all short-term bets. Like,
I like where you got him in the Draft Sharks. I mean, I love the speed and pace of our Draft Sharks mock draft that we're in, Alan.
It should be called the Draft Snails, not Draft Sharks.
This is a contract year for Chuba Hubbard. He's leaving next year, so this is not over. He has the beginning of the year, and then the inevitable setback that Jonathan Brooks has when he tweaks a hamstring, as most of these guys coming back from ACLs to push themselves do. And Chuba Hubbard has an all-purpose skill set with size, and he ran for 2,000 yards in college. So you run for 2,000 yards at a major conference school, and everybody forgets you're good.
Right. He was a track star, right? On the Canadian Olympic team. I mean, he's fast.
I like it, guys. Chuba also, like, we've seen it. We saw 900 yards last year. It's not like this is we're wish casting how he could do if he's given like a number of carries. So, and what we also like is the Dave Canales offense is very running back friendly. Rachaad White last year had 330 or so touches under Canales, and he was one of the league leaders in carries and also was top 7 in RB targets as well. So Dave Canales
I just tell you how happy this makes me, Theo, because whenever good players that were undervalued, they have this impression that they leave on the coaches that are leaving, and those coaches go somewhere else, and then whatever the residue of the great player that they left behind, it gets imprinted onto them, right? And now, which just fuels more of this, coach worship.
Well, Jonathan Brooks, Dave Canales, you love that,
and the coach-centric analysis, right? The fact that the kernel of the coach-centric analysis, you have to actually follow the thread all the way back to the source, is the greatness of Rachaad White, that the offensive coordinator is now getting the credit from the greatness of Rachaad White. That is the ultimate source of where the coach hype is coming from. And then ultimately, that will prop up Jonathan Brooks and anyone associated with that running game. That just makes me very, very, very happy. But it also says something else. There's a reason why Rachaad White's still a value, because what the fantasy community does is they say, wait, we were wrong about Rachaad White last year. I got it. Let's credit the coach.
But at the same time, you can agree that Dave Canales got the best out of Rachaad White. He's a good enough coach that, unlike some guys like, let's say, an Arthur Smith, where Arthur Smith might hold guys back, Dave Canales seems to maximize the talent that he has available to him. Last year, he had a top 7 wide receiver and a top 7 running back on the same team. So, got to give him a little bit of credit. We can't take away Rachaad White's. I think we've kind of proven the public wrong that Rachaad White is actually good at football. We've been on that train a long time, but we have to give a little bit of credit to Mr. Canales for steering the ship in the right direction, Matt. I don't think Rachaad White is a top 4 running back with every single coach in the league last year.
Okay. Well, we'll see how Rachaad White does this year. I think that Canales should have given Rachaad White fewer carries and a hell of a lot more targets. So I actually don't agree that he optimized Rachaad White. Rachaad White has a lot more to go. Rachaad White is a 20 fantasy points per game running back if used in an optimal way. And I also understand his position. He's going to give Keyshawn Vaughn touches? No. Right? So I get it. I get why he had to give Rachaad White so many carries. But if you're talking about, hey, he optimized, he got the very most, he squeezed the most out of this non-talent that is Rachaad White, nonsense. We haven't seen the best of Rachaad White yet.
Fair enough. Fair enough. He's going too cheap in a lot of these underdog drafts as well. Guys, I want to come back over to...
Could we consider Rachaad White a sleeper?
No. I mean, yes.
He's anytime we have to use the word value. Can't use the word sleeper.
Okay, we have to use
okay. Top five running back last year.
Okay, good.
All right, good. Let's continue on with some of these quote boring guys before we hit a few of those second year exciting guys. I mean, how about Antonio Gibson, guys? Is that somebody? There was a point where he was like a first round redraft pick. Now he's on New England. Everyone thinks. Yeah, you remember there was a couple when he was.
I had an FFPC. The
next Christian McCaffrey.
I traded him for the 101. It was like Antonio Gibson and something. He was a rocket ship to the moon one year, and I traded him for a 101 in a single QB format league. Antonio Gibson had peak dynasty value.
So is he a sleeper, guys? Like, could he be someone that we're starting every week is getting you 6 for 70 through the air, 5 for 60, and all of a sudden it's like, wow, Antonio Gibson's RB14 and we're in week 5.
Antonio Gibson is a bet against a receiver being a weekly option in New England. If you want to take none of these receivers is going to be somebody that we're going to ever be able to lean on, then Antonio Gibson is going to be a weekly option. I think that there is still a little bit of contingency with him where it would take a Ramondre Stevenson injury, which we saw last year. Stevenson missed time last year. Zeke stepped right in and was productive for us. But if Stevenson misses time, Gibson is a guy who I think I would be very interested in. And I think that he could have a weekly role as a receiver even when Stevenson is healthy. Gibson last year had a career high in receptions, which is sort of like people discounted his year last year, but he's never finished below RB41 in points per game. He was just sort of phased out by Ron Rivera and Eric Bieniemy as a runner, but they used him as a receiver last year. I wonder if New England is going to get him back to carrying the football. So I like that call, Alan. I think that Antonio Gibson does have some outs. He's still young enough. He's been very productive. You look at his total touchdowns in his career, the guy's got nearly 30 NFL touchdowns. And he's a very athletic player. We were team Antonio Gibson during the ascent. We were betrayed by Ron Rivera with that usage. But I think it could come back a little bit. But it's Stevenson and him sort of box each other out in terms of the receiving upside for both. Because I think they're both going to cannibalize each other as receivers. But yeah, if Stevenson goes down, Gibson would absolutely be a top 15 play.
Gibson's a better receiver than Ramondre Stevenson. He's just a better football player than Ramondre Stevenson. And the beauty is he ended up going to the team that was the highest bidder. This is what I love about drafting any running back that signs as a free agent, like we talked about with Devin Singletary, right? Devin Singletary is a guy you want to trade for, draft, and then flip because we know the Giants like him. They're going to feed him, and then he is inevitably going to disappoint. He's inevitably not going to be up for carrying a full workload. But in that time where he gives you some spike weeks like he did at the end of last season, you have a window. Gibson's in a much better position in that he could just be fully unlocked, and that's not a guy I'd necessarily am looking to flip. We're just blessed that he went to a place that looks at his profile and his production history and is like, oh my God, what a bargain. Right? That was the whole thing. This has been a known phenomenon since he was drafted. Since the first year, we've known Washington does not appreciate Antonio Gibson. Now, he is necessarily on the team that appreciates him the most. He went from the team that appreciates him the least to the team that appreciates him the most. So absolutely I want all this guy. This is the perfect truther candidate. When I'm thinking about my truthers, I'm marking down Gainwell and I'm marking down Antonio Gibson. Because why? Because they do it all. They do it all. Gainwell doesn't have the size, but he has the offense. Everything else, he checks those boxes. Gibson has the size and the athleticism, just doesn't have the offense. Everything else, he checks all the boxes. Yes, please.
All right, guys. Another sleeper running back that fits Matt's description of the second-year guy. Chase Brown is still not getting the love, and why can't he be the starter? Why are we assuming it's Zach Moss? So for somebody that, he fits that 5th round, second year, I mean, he's checking all these boxes. So does Chase Brown have, quote, sleeper appeal while he's still buyable right now? Any second round pick is going to get you Chase Brown.
I like the way you phrased that about the trade market for him. I would argue that he steamed up a little bit in these startups because nobody's really in on Zach Moss as sort of a long-term play there. Chase Brown does check off a lot of the boxes we're looking at in terms of we want running backs with a ton of speed. Chase Brown hit the second highest miles per hour of any player in the NFL last year on a catch and run, and also has pass catching ability. Chase Brown profiles as a guy who can catch a lot of balls. The guy who cannot catch a lot of balls is Zach Moss, who's has never broken 30 receptions at any point in his NFL career. So to me, I like that call at all. I like that call a lot, I should say, but I don't think Chase Brown's that cheap. Unlike a couple of these other guys, like Antonio Gibson's much, much cheaper. Chase Brown steamed up with some people, but Alan, I don't think you're wrong there. One of those two running backs is going to beat their ADP this year. I'd rather go with the one who can actually catch passes. And this is a team that's leaned on the running back position as a receiver out of the backfield. You talk about Joe Mixon, you talk about Samaje Perine. This has continually been part of the Bengals' MO to use a running back in the passing game. Chase Brown certainly qualifies as a guy who could do that.
They've added receivers. They added even tight end talent, right, in Mike Gesicki, didn't they?
What's Gesicki going to do?
Gesicki's a better football player than Chase Brown, fellas. The red flag with Chase Brown is you're going to go out and run for 1,600 yards on 300-plus carries and yet only catch 27 passes? And 27 passes for only 240 receiving yards. So he doesn't even have in his full college career, he barely has 500 receiving yards. So across 5 years of college, took him 5 years. Why? Because scouts don't think he's a good football player. Because when he goes to the Senior Bowl, he looks like he forgot how to play the sport of football. He's putting the ball on the ground constantly, getting blown up in pass pro. There's something about him that is just not clicking, similar to his best comparable, Darrington Evans. Darrington Evans had a very similar profile, and yet in the NFL, he just wasn't built for this. I question whether he's built for the NFL. I don't necessarily think that he is. And the running back on Cincinnati, you're not drafting him for a bunch of dump-offs. That's not what Burrow is all about. Burrow has plenty of options. You're there to score touchdowns. You're there to be getting the ball on the 3-yard line and plunging it in and having some 3-touchdown games. So, I know that everyone's looking at this profile on PlayerProfiler, just seeing a 95th percentile burst score. They're like, this guy looks like a bigger, better version of Evan Hull on a better offense with no Jonathan Taylor. How could the Podfather prefer Evan Hull to Chase Brown? It's true. I actually think that the play here in Cincinnati is the short-term Zach Moss. I'm gobbling up Zach Moss just like Devin Singletary, just like DeAndre Swift. Get them when they're inexpensive and flip them.
We'll agree to disagree with the little Chase Brown here, Matt.
Wasn't that the close? Flip them. That was perfect. The word flip them. Hard close.
Well, I know I've seem to have lost my touch.
Well, no. We're not going to end the show, guys, without talking about Brian Robinson, because Matt in the pre-show told us he's finally going to break down this Washington backfield and discuss a little Brian Robinson before we get out of here.
I thought that it would be nice to close out the show, and we're certainly going to put this in the outtakes. For the podcast, we're going to close out on that. There's no doubt about that. And I think this is perfect for the outtakes, and I think that the YouTube listeners would appreciate this. I actually like that we've saved this for the end, little mansion lifestyle. We talked about this pre-show, and it would be a shame to not talk about it now.
Oh, yeah.
This is a story that I wanted to surface like weeks ago. And then it turns out every podcast is talking about this, right? This is a story. I saw this, the New York Post, by the way, and you could see. You see, I screenshotted it 18 hours ago. I just wanted to make sure that people know. Number one, I love the New York Post. The New York Post, whoever is writing the headlines of the New York Post, when you come on as a writer for Player Profiler, what's one of my suggestions, Theo, for new writers?
New York Post headlines.
Just read New York Post. Let it wash over you. And they go, "Oh, this is clickbait." Of course, it's clickbait. Why do you think the New York Post, in a industry that is in the ultimate death spiral, newspapers? Why is it the New York Post is the one newspaper that anyone's paying attention to?
I mean, Anthony Weiner's, they call it Weiner's second coming. I mean, Tiger pulls out. These are like the ultimate.
It's incredible. It's incredible.
They're in the digital age, digital publications, the New York Post has figured it out. Now, I know the New York Times, they've figured it out by giving you everything but news that you can pay for, whether it be recipes, whether it be crossword puzzles. They're like, culture and games, not terrorism, Alan. So the New York Post has figured out how to make money, not with actual news, where the New York Times has figured out how to make money without actual news. The New York Post, meanwhile, is actually surfacing news that makes me want to read it. Remote Amazon tribe connects to Elon Musk's Starlink internet, becomes hooked on porn and social media. I would challenge anyone not to click on that link. That's the most interesting part of that to me, is just how it draws you in and makes you want to click.
Can we give the reporter who wrote this story the Pulitzer already?
Thank you. Yes. Do you want? Yeah. I don't think it should go to a journalism or a journalist writing about, one of the wars, right? I mean, no. It needs to go to the person who went down and got photos of a guy holding up a Starlink box.
The AVN Award, Writer of the Year for AVN.
And I feel bad, man. I feel bad. I mean, at least I've had time to acclimate to the internet, but not like my daughter, right? My daughter has had all this time to acclimate to the internet. She's so well balanced with how she uses her phone and the iPad. Right now, she's reading a book, right? And I'm like, if I were your age, I don't think I could read a book, because I think the pull of the device would be too much. But I think that the hope is for people with children that they're like, oh my God, they're on the device so much. I think that they're learning at an early age how to balance and how to use it, and find the utility in it, but not necessarily have it control their lives. It's the people that are the millennials where this device was airdropped on them without their ability to acclimate to it at an early age. And I think it's ruined more of those lives, and it's going to ruin a bunch of these tribesmen and tribeswomen's lives because they didn't have a chance to acclimate. And so, of course, the tribe is gonna disintegrate with Starlink. It's not helpful. Of course. I remember when we would find a ripped page of a Playboy in a dumpster, and it was the greatest thing. It was essentially like Starlink for these tribes, was that one page from a Penthouse or a Playboy that we would find in the trash.
With the pages stuck together.
And speaking of my daughter, I just want to say a quick shout out. She doesn't listen to the show, but she had her bat mitzvah this past weekend. And I wanted to thank Theo. Theo, we had a contentious show. This was the show, probably the show where we disagreed the most in the history of the Sonic Truth podcast. And I wanted to say that I appreciated you coming to the bat mitzvah with your whole family and celebrating with Vivian. She, really appreciated not only her friends coming, but my friends coming and my wife's friends coming. It made for just a a joyous event, so much dancing, so much fun, and I should pull up this one more photo for the YouTube audience.
Before you go on with that, just know the worst thing, this is the proverbial you, Matt, could ever do is invite me to anything, because it is a burden. I always, no weddings, no bar mitzvahs, no sweet 16s. I don't want to drive anywhere. I don't want to go anywhere. My wife is trying to get me to go to her niece's bat mitzvah. To me, it's like there's nothing worse in the world than having to go to one of these.
What state would this be in that she wants you to travel to? Is
New
it
York,
Florida?
New York.
New York?
Yeah. If it was driving, I wouldn't have a problem.
Make the trip, Alan.
What do you think? I have a choice? You think I have a choice?
Alan.
Long Island? Is it a Long Island one?
Westchester.
Oh.
Yep. It's an easy airport.
Yeah, if only there was Jacksonville to Westchester, it would be
There's
great.
no? Oh, no.
Jacksonville.
Poor Jacksonville.
You see this right
Westchester,
here,
there are direct flights from Westchester to every town in Florida except Jacksonville. So what does that say about Jacksonville?
That it's a tertiary city.
So what does that say? So, Alan, I will say that you were on my initial list of invites.
Happy to be on the cut list.
My wife cut down.
Yep.
She cut most people.
Thank God.
And then part of the cut rationale was what's the probability of someone actually making that flight?
Right. Then it's
Theo
an invitation.
driving from Long Island, that seemed much more feasible. I will say, Alan, that you are the only other name outside our immediate family that is in my will.
Oh, really?
That's right. So we did do a will last year, at the end of last year, and we had to get. I just remember the lawyer asking, to make sure that we got the spelling of your name right, and I laughed out loud every time.
What am I getting?
She brought
What
up
is he getting?
Alan Seslowsky. And I was like, and then my wife would always roll her eyes and I would laugh. It was like such a little gimmick that would give me, it's like, when you're in these tedious meetings and you're thinking about things you don't want to think about, like your own death, it is nice to have one little thing that gives you joy, that makes you chuckle, right? And the fact that you are in this serious document is very funny.
What am I getting?
Do you think I'm going to tell you?
Well, I don't want to have to.
Of course I'm not going to tell you. Absolutely not.
I'll probably go before you, so I'll never know.
Anyway, you're in there. So here is a picture that I want to share with the audience briefly of the moment before the father-daughter dance. So to set this up, they invited me to dance with my daughter, and I happened to be behind a couch, and I didn't want to have to spend the time, everybody waiting, looking at me, walking all the way around the couch to get around it. So I decided just to jump over it, and I made it. And I do want to also point out on the left, if you look near the basketball hoop, there is our man, Theo Gremminger. Okay? Don't ask me how I did that. Okay, that was a moment in time. I was filled with adrenaline. Okay? Someone in the audience did not actually see it in the moment because he was checking Underdog. So this is one of the reasons why we love Underdog, because even in one of the most exciting moments of a very special event, he was seeing if he was on the clock.
This
is a Photoshop right here. This is Photoshop.
Slow draft season does not stop. I'm maxing out some contests here, and I have multiple Dynasty startups going on at the same time. I think I had an FFPC 350 going here. I'm in the streets, guys. The streets don't like respect my social life and the events I'm at. The streets just keep on rolling when it comes to slow draft season.
It's pretty funny how you look around the crowd, and there's other angles of this, and there's just certain people that are unimpressed and certain people that are shocked, and it's always funny. It's always funny. I barely remember it, man. Most of the speeches and toasts, I black out when I do these things.
You got
I'd like
people.
To point out the lady next to you is looking down as well, Matt. The lady directly next to you.
You got people goofing on your fit here, Matt. You got people goofing on your fit, saying you look like you're wearing Old Navy.
Well, no, Matt had a I'll give Matt some
What
credit.
are they talking about?
Well dressed, had a
your
very
outfit.
nice,
They're
nice
saying
blazer.
Your fit.
My
Your
outfit.
fit.
Oh my god,
They're
I
saying
look
your
great.
fit.
Blaze-
Man, your
the
fit is
blazer
what
was-
the kids say.
It was a
Oh
nice
no, I look
blazer.
great. Yeah, you can't wear
Nice blazer.
you can't wear dress shoes or anything. I almost wore like full blown sneakers, but I at least had to wear some shoes that had, sports soles, so that just in case one of these types of moves was necessary. Absolutely. But yeah, we had a great time. Theo, thank you very much for coming.
Wait, hold on one second.
It
Wait,
meant
I
a
got a
lot to me,
question,
man.
You don't have to say the amount, but was Theo's gift good, above average, or was he cheap?
Theo had
Hold
a
on.
great gift. Theo,
Okay.
we opened all the cards. Theo was very generous, probably more generous than he needed to be. So I thank you, Theo.
And I threw in the proper numbers too. Alan knows there's certain numbers you have to end.
18, 36, yeah. The
it has
double.
to be
you go.
divisible by
Hi.
18. Yep,
Yep.
divisible
Hey,
by 18.
so what do you
Amateur
was
hour
there,
if you don't.
Was there somebody, obviously you don't have to name any names, was there somebody that you guys invited that you were surprised how cheap they were and you made mental note of it?
Not really. It was
Okay.
it was pretty straightforward. The few people that gave the least, they were the most fringe.
Right. So what is the standard number where you're like, okay, that's fine. Like you get invited as a couple, man and woman, right? They come there, and what's the number where you don't even blink an eye? Like if they gave 300, is that the right number? Is 250? Is it 400?
Yeah,
What's
it's
the
around. I
going
think
rate?
the most common amount was around 250.
Okay.
Right. So 252, I believe.
252.
So 252 was the most common amount. And
Right. 'Cause
just so everybody knows, Theo was a baller. Theo exceeded that.
Yeah, well, that's what I gathered, right? Because, yeah, no, it's very interesting because you write everything down, especially at a wedding, right? You write everything down because that's the amount that you're going to basically reciprocate when it's the other way. I mean, it's a very strategic plan. You get like angry if someone gets cheap. I had someone that came to my wedding. It was a couple, and they gave $100. $100 for two people. That didn't even cover one person's plate.
It's not about that
I remember
for us,
when,
Alan.
Yeah.
It's really not about that. It's nice, though. You know what she's doing? You know, at age 18, at age 13, actually, I thought it was 18. It's 13. You can open a Roth IRA. She's
smart on her.
She's
her
putting
part.
almost all of it in a Roth IRA, and she already knows the stocks she wants to buy. She's buying QQQ, which is the Invesco NASDAQ index fund, and SPY, which is an S&P index fund. And I think she's going to buy one stock. We don't know what stock. Could be Roblox. Could be some stock. I don't know. Who cares? It doesn't matter. She's going to dabble a little bit on an individual stock, and the rest of it's going to be index funds. So she's already starting at 13 with literally thousands of dollars in index funds. She's going to be very successful.
Well, mazel tov to the young lady, and I joke about the whole thing. It sounds like it was awesome. I hope we see some video of you jumping as well. That sounds like that could have been captured on video.
We're looking for the video.
Okay.
If anyone has a video of that moment, let me know.
Was there a videographer, or nowadays when everyone just has their phones, it's enough?
We had a photographer. We did not have a videographer.
Yeah, I agree with that call right there. You want a pro
photographer was good. We actually had two photographers. We had a photographer for our own documentation, but then also the event company had a photographer, and then those photos were live going up on the big screens as they were. So as you were at the event, you would look up and photos that were taken like 5 minutes ago are up there. It's very cool.
And then last, most important question, what was her theme, right? Every bar mitzvah has a theme. Bat mitzvah has a theme.
Not anymore.
Thank God. Thank God.
Not anymore. No
okay,
theme.
so that's old school.
The theme was fun.
Okay, all right.
The theme was dancing and having a great time. It kind of had like maybe a little bit of a New Year's-y, that was about it though. Yeah, I think
but you guys remember the theme, right? That used to be a thing in the 90s.
The themes used to be a thing. New York, and all. Yes, all these. No more. This was a very cool. My wife did an incredible job putting this together. My daughter did an incredible job of doing all the work that it takes. Because I'm Catholic, or I was raised Catholic anyway. I'm atheist now, but I had to go through a first communion. And that was absolutely nothing. That was nothing compared to a bat mitzvah. So congratulations to Vivian. Until next time, everybody. From the Podfather to you, I deeply appreciate you tuning in. And many ask, what can I do? What can I do to help support the host, the research they do, the production costs? Go to PlayerProfiler.com. Dynasty Deluxe, World Famous Draft Kit, Rankings, DFS Dominator, and of course, data analysis. Subscribe to any one of those, and you support all of us and take Player Profiler to the moon.